This is a sports catastrophe production. Hey there, Heather, ho there. Jeff Cutter Diamond welcoming you to another sports catastrophe on this day. And on this day, July the 16th, 1950, one of the grimmest moments in Brazilian soccer history had happened. I talked about the 7-1 thumping that Germany gave Brazil at the semifinals in 2014, back about 8 days ago. But now let's go with the real truth about Brazil, all that. So anyway, on July 16, 1950, at the Maracanã Stadium, Uruguay would take on Brazil. It would be the final group stage game. Now the weird thing is that the 1950 World Cup had the winner to be determined by a final group stage instead of a knockout semifinal. All that. They would do a round robin. Brazil was up by 1 point on Uruguay going into the final match. Uruguay needed a win because otherwise Brazil would get in. Brazil just needed a tie to be the champion. And Brazil was looking good and all that. It was a massive upset. Maracanazo. That's what it is. So anyway, the Bowl of Maracana. It was the second final match of the World Cup involving two South American teams. The first was 1930. And the man who scored the winning goal actually died 65 years exactly after scoring the decisive goal at the age of 88. So yeah, so over 199,000 people were at the Maracana. Man, 199,000. That's amazing. So the 1950 World Cup was very unique. Instead of a knockout stage, the preliminary group stage was followed by another round robin group. So basically, it was huge and all that. So anyway, the 1950 World Cup happened. This was the first World Cup after the war happened. So yeah, it was huge. Europe was still in ruins because of the war. FIFA had difficulties finding country interested in hosting events because of the more urgent priorities in the sporting celebration. Brazil, it was actually the World Cup was at risk of not being held for sheer lack of interest from the international community. But Brazil said they would host it on the condition that the tournament happened in 1950. They were proposing in 1949. Brazil's bid was accepted, mostly due to the fact that the last two tournaments were in Europe. They wanted a country. They got the host nation. There were some problems. Italy was of particular interest because they were the defending champions. They still had a little bit of issue because, Mussolini, but basically, yeah. However, the Italian national team was weakened because a lot of its starting lineup was in the Superga air disaster over Torino, when Torino was basically king of Italian soccer in the 1940s. Sadly, though, that crash ruined their team and the Italian national team. The Italians decided to attend by boat instead of plane, for obvious reasons. Brazil and Italy would qualify automatically, and then they'll leave 14 places remaining: 7 to Europe, 6 to the Americas, North and South, of course, and 1 to Asia. Germany and Japan were unable to participate because they were occupied and all that. However, Japan and Germany would get readmitted to FIFA in September 1950. The UK nations were ready to go. The home nations of England, Scotland, Northern Ireland, and Wales would face each other. FIFA would put the 4 home nations into a group and said that whoever won that group and even take first and second place in the group would qualify and all that. The top 2 teams would qualify. England won and Scotland took second. It was like, okay, that's great. However, Scotland had issues because Scotland actually decided to withdraw because Scotland said if we don't win the home championship like that group, we're not going to the World Cup. And that bit of petulance ruined Scotland's chances to get to their first World Cup. England was in their first World Cup in 1950 because they had troubles with the FA with FIFA in the 1930s. There were a lot of teams that refused to participate in the qualifying tournament, mostly the Iron Curtain. So yeah, there was a lot of withdrawals and all that. So there were a lot of withdrawals during qualification. So the following six, it was down to 16 teams: Bolivia, Brazil, Chile, England, India, Italy, Mexico, Paraguay, Spain, Scotland, Sweden, Switzerland, Turkey, U.S., Uruguay, and Yugoslavia. All right, so we got the 16 teams. However, as I said before the qualifying campaign, the Scottish Football Association said that if we don't win the home championship, we're not going to Brazil. All that. And so Scotland had to withdraw. Turkey also withdrew because of financial conditions. So FIFA decided to put Portugal, Ireland, and France in to fill the gaps. Portugal and Ireland refused, and France got in. So 3 withdrawals, but only 1 jump up. That was France. India also was there were so there were 15 teams. They would one group would have like they drew. Group 1 would have had Brazil, Mexico, Yugoslavia, Switzerland. Group 2 was England, Spain, Chile, and the Americans. Group 3 was Sweden, Italy, Paraguay, and India. And Group 4 was Uruguay, France, and Bolivia. Unfortunately, things would hurt a lot of things. India decided to go against the World Cup, citing travel costs and all that. Lack of practice time, and they actually valued the Olympics over the World Cup. Although FIFA said that India could not play barefoot soccer, it wasn't the case. So basically, India put the Olympics over the World Cup. Unfortunately, that's the only time they've had a chance to get to the World Cup. France decided to withdraw too. Worst part is that there wasn't enough time to invite further replacement teams or to reorganize the groups. So groups 1 and 2 stayed the same, the 4 teams. Group 3 would have 3 teams, and Group 4 would have 2 teams. Like, honestly, it was pathetic and all that. So they decided that the 13 teams draw on the 4 first-round groups. Whoever won each group would be in a 14 pool or group at the end of the thing. It would make it a so the format, they decided to make the format like the final 4 would be in round robin games against each other, which would give more games and more incentive for the European squads to play in Brazil. So anyway, yeah. So Group 1 didn't get affected by any withdrawals. Brazil, with 2 wins and a tie, got in ahead of Yugoslavia, Switzerland, and Mexico. Mexico gave up 10 goals in the tournament. So Brazil tied Switzerland but beat Yugoslavia and Mexico to qualify. Yugoslavia had a chance to knock out Brazil, but they failed. In Group 2, which also didn't get affected by major changes, Spain won the group, winning all 3 games against England, Chile, and the United States. England made a farce of things. Losing to Spain was one thing. Well, they beat Chile 2-0, which was great. I mean, Chile was pretty bad. Spain beat the Americans. Well, Spain would beat Chile later on 2-0. The U.S. and England would play, and England was hoping to win and then get a winner-take-all game against Spain for the right to go to the semifinals. Unfortunately, though, their plans backfired as they lost 1-0 in one of the most famous upsets of all time, as Americans by Joe Gations made it 1-0. England made a farce of things. They lost to Spain, whereas Chile crushed the Americans. Surprise, surprise, 5-2. So basically, England made a farce of things and all that. The Americans, the 1950 tournament would be their last for 4 decades. Imagine that. Anyway, Group 3 would have seen Italy with India was Sweden, Italy, and Paraguay. So basically, it was Sweden, Italy, and Paraguay face each other. Sweden would beat Italy, surprisingly. Sweden tied Paraguay, and then Italy beat Paraguay, knowing that, well, obviously, if Paraguay had won, they could have tried to get in a playoff with Sweden, but no, Italy beat Paraguay. Gonna feel bad for Italy because Italy was the team that was hit hard by that air disaster. So anyway, in Group 4, Uruguay would play Bolivia. One game, and Uruguay won 8-0, getting them to the semifinals somehow. So coming into the game, Uruguay in the final group tied Spain 2-2, whereas Brazil crushed Sweden in divine powder 7-1. Brazil would also crush Spain 6-1, whereas Uruguay beat Sweden 3-2. After Sweden beat Spain, Brazil knew a tie would have been sufficient enough to win the whole thing. There were a lot of celebrations and all that. The Brazilian government even made gold medals with each player's name imprinted on them before the game. And the mayor of Rio says that you will be hailed as champions by millions of compatriots in a few hours. So yeah, Rio basically was bustling with activity and all of that. Yeah, the Maracana were basically concrete grandstands with no seats. So basically, Uruguay prepared themselves knowing that Brazil was over reactionary. However, Brazil did score early as Freaca made it 1-0. Uruguay would come back on a goal by Juan Antonio Scavino. Juan Alberto Scavino, pardon, made it 1-1. And then Alcides Chiquia, the guy who died 65 years to the day he scored that winning goal. He scored to make it 2-1, and Brazil shockingly lost. It was like, how the hell can you do that? Remember, there were no substitutions, so Uruguay shockingly won the tournament. Basically, many newspapers and fans refused to accept the fact that they had been defeated. Kind of akin to when the US beat England 1-0. Many American papers didn't even put anything on it. And some papers actually in England thought it was a mistake and put 1-0. It was 10-0 for England. All that, or 10-1. But no, it was 1-0. Basically, fans would commit suicide and all that. Brazil did rebound and win World Cups in 58 and 62. In fact, Nilton Santos and Carlos Castillo, who were actually unused members of the 1950 team, actually won titles and all that. There were a lot of members who couldn't play for Brazil ever again, and the gold medals were discarded. However, what people forget is that Brazil's major shirts were white shirts with blue collars. And basically, it was unpatriotic, and pressure was mounting to change the colors. And so, basically, the concept of a yellow shirt with green trim, blue shirts, and white socks were used in 1954 and have been used ever since. Brazil would have to wear their away kit in the game against Sweden because their colors clashed with Sweden's. There would be a major term called the Phantom of 50, would later be used to refer to the fear that Brazilians feel about the Uruguay national team after this loss at the Maracana Stadium. Brazil almost didn't even qualify for the 94 World Cup. They were losing important games. They would have to play Uruguay in the final match of qualifying. And Brazil needed to win the game. Thankfully, they won 2-0 thanks to Romario. So, yeah. It's terrible. It was, and of course, that 7-1 humiliation. The worst part was that many Brazilians, including goalkeeper Barbosa, were basically blacklisted, if you will. Barbosa had to end up on an island off of Brazil for 2 weeks. Basically, Barbosa and the rest of the 1950 squad were not allowed to take part in anything to do with the Brazil soccer team as long as they lived. And that's kind of stupid, don't you think? But the fact of the matter is that, you know, it was just terrible. I mean, honestly, Brazilians seem to be very petulant. But remember, this is the 1950s. So, yeah, you got to know what to do. Anyway, I'm Jeff Diamond. Adieu.